647 do 63647 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 do x364 do 637 do 637 do 637 do 637 do 637. It was an ordinary morning in the small city of Fairview, the kind of place where neighbors waved from their porches and everyone knew the mayor by name. The sun was still low, spilling a soft orange light across the quiet streets as Tiana got ready for school. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, twisting a strand of her thick curls between her fingers. Her hair was her pride, full, dark, and naturally coiled. It was something she used to struggle with when she was younger, but lately she had started to love it. Her dad always said, "Your hair tells a story. Never let anyone make you feel like it shouldn't." She smiled at her reflection as she pinned the last twist into place. Her mother called out from the kitchen, telling her to hurry or she'd miss the bus. Tiana grabbed her backpack and jogged down the stairs. The smell of pancakes filled the air, and her father sat at the table in his work shirt reading the morning news on his tablet. He looked up and grinned. "There's my superstar," he said. "Big presentation in science class today?" Tiana nodded proudly. "Yep, we're building volcano models. Mine actually smokes this time." Her dad laughed. "That's my girl. Just don't make it explode like last time." City Hall doesn't need another call from the fire department about lava in the gym. They all laughed together, the way families do when mornings still feel easy and safe. Her father kissed her forehead before she left. "Be kind, be brave, and remember, your curls are your crown." She didn't know how much those words would matter later. At school, the day began like any other. Tiana greeted her friends, dropped her bag at her locker, and headed to first period. But she could already feel eyes on her. A few girls from another class whispered as she passed. She heard one of them mutter something about her hair being too big. It wasn't the first time she'd heard that, but she tried not to react. She had promised herself that no one's words would take her confidence away. The morning rolled on. Math, English, then gym class. Gym was her least favorite. Not because she hated sports, but because it was the one place she felt the most judged. She changed into her gym uniform and tied her shoes while a group of girls nearby giggled about something on their phones. She tried not to pay attention, but when she heard her name, her stomach tightened. "Did you see her hair today?" one girl said. "Looks like she stuck her finger in a socket." Another girl laughed. "You think she even washes it?" Tiana's face burned, but she stayed quiet. She'd learned that reacting only made things worse. The coach came in, told everyone to line up, and they started running laps. For a while, she forgot about it. She focused on the sound of her sneakers hitting the floor, the echo of the whistle, the rhythm of breathing in and out. But when class ended, things changed as everyone headed back to the locker room. Tiana was one of the last to finish changing. The room was nearly empty except for her and 3 girls, the same ones who had been laughing earlier. They lingered near the benches, whispering. Tiana kept her head down, slipping her hoodie over her hair. "Hey," one of them called. "Your hair looks kinda cool up close. Can we touch it?" Tiana froze. She'd heard that question before. It always sounded innocent at first, but it never was. "No thanks," she said quietly. "I just want to finish up." The girls exchanged looks. "Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive," another said. "We just want to see what it feels like." Before she could react, one of them reached out and grabbed a handful of her curls. Tiana jerked back. "Stop," she said, her voice shaking. The girls laughed like it was some kind of game. "Relax, we're just playing," one of them said. Then something glinted in her hand. A small pair of scissors, probably from art class. "Let's give her a trim," she joked. Tiana's heart dropped. "Don't you dare," she started, but it was too late. The girl made a quick snip, and a piece of her hair fell to the floor. The others burst out laughing. For a moment, Tiana couldn't even move. It didn't feel real. The laughter echoed around her, bouncing off the lockers like cruel music. She tried to cover her hair, but one of the girls held her arm. "It's just for fun," she said. "You'll thank us later." That was when the gym door swung open. A teacher's voice cut through the laughter. "What on earth is going on here?" The girls froze. Tiana stood there trembling, tears welling up but refusing to fall. The teacher's eyes went wide as she saw the scissors and the hair on the ground. "Who did this?" she demanded. No one spoke. The girls mumbled excuses about just playing around, but the teacher wasn't buying it. She led them all to the office. Tiana walked quietly, her head down, clutching her backpack. Every step felt heavy. In the nurse's office, she finally let the tears fall. The nurse spoke gently, telling her everything would be okay, but it didn't feel that way. She stared at the strands of her hair on the tissue, wishing she could go back an hour, back to when her biggest worry was her science project. Meanwhile, the principal called her father. It was supposed to be a calm conversation, just to inform him of a situation at school. But when the counselor picked up the phone and said the words, "Someone cut her hair," the tone of the whole day shifted. Back at City Hall, Mayor Leonard was in the middle of a budget meeting when his assistant handed him the phone. He looked annoyed at first, thinking it was a scheduling mix-up. But as he listened, his expression changed. His jaw tightened. He didn't say much, just a quiet, controlled, "I'll be there in 10 minutes." His staff watched as he stood up, grabbed his jacket, and walked out. The calm, composed leader they knew was gone. This was a father now, one who had just learned that his daughter had been humiliated. At school, Tiana sat silently in the nurse's office. The minutes felt like hours. She kept touching her hair, feeling the uneven patches, her heart aching with embarrassment. Every time someone walked by, she turned her face away. The laughter of those girls still rang in her ears. Outside, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot faster than usual. The mayor stepped out, his face unreadable. He wasn't thinking about press conferences or city business anymore. He was thinking about the little girl he had dropped off that morning, the one who had been so proud of her curls. He walked into the building without waiting for an escort. The secretary at the front desk stammered something about checking in, but he just said, "Where's my daughter?" His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the kind of weight that made everyone listen. In the nurse's office, Tiana looked up when the door opened. When she saw her dad, she burst into tears. He crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled her into his arms. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He could feel her shaking. "They cut it," she whispered. "They said it was just a joke." He closed his eyes, holding her tighter. Every instinct in him wanted to explode, but he knew he couldn't. Not yet. He had to stay calm. For her. When she finally stopped crying, he pulled back just enough to look at her. "We're going to handle this," he said softly. "I promise." He stood up, his face hardening. "Where's the principal?" The nurse hesitated, sensing the storm that was coming. But she pointed down the hall. The mayor walked out, his steps steady but heavy. The air in the building seemed to shift around him. Teachers peeked from classrooms, whispering. Everyone knew something serious had just happened. In the office, the principal looked up, startled, as the mayor walked in. "Mr. Leonard, sir. I was just about to call you again." "You already did," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Now I'm here. Let's talk about what happened to my daughter." The principal swallowed hard. He'd dealt with upset parents before, but this was different. There was something in the mayor's tone, a mix of authority and deep personal pain. Tiana sat in the hallway outside the office, waiting. She could hear muffled voices inside, but not the words. She stared at the floor, feeling both scared and safe at the same time. Her father was here now, and something told her things were about to change, not just for her, but for the whole school. The principal's office felt tense. The mayor stood across from the desk, his hands in his pockets, but his expression said everything. The principal tried to keep his composure, flipping through a folder, pretending to look for something important. But his voice wavered slightly when he finally spoke. "Mr. Leonard, first of all, I want to say how deeply sorry we are for what happened to your daughter. This was an unfortunate misunderstanding between students and—" The mayor interrupted softly. "A misunderstanding? Someone cut my child's hair with scissors. That's not a misunderstanding. That's humiliation." The principal cleared his throat, choosing his words carefully. "You're absolutely right. We're taking this very seriously. The students involved will face disciplinary action according to our school policy." The mayor leaned forward slightly, his eyes steady. "What policy covers assault with scissors? Or public humiliation? Because I'm not sure a week's suspension teaches them much about respect." The room fell quiet. The principal looked down, fumbling for words. "We don't condone this kind of behavior. The counselor is talking to the girls as we speak. We'll arrange mediation." "Mediation?" the mayor said, his voice rising just a little. "You think my daughter needs to sit in a room with the people who cut her hair and pretend it's fine?" The principal looked helpless. "We're trying to handle it the right way." The mayor took a slow breath, trying to control the anger boiling inside. He knew shouting wouldn't solve it. But he also knew what it felt like to be on the other side of this kind of pain. To be treated differently because of how you look. He had promised himself long ago that if he ever had kids, they would never feel that same shame. "I appreciate that you're trying," he said finally, his tone softer but firm. "But this isn't just about discipline. It's about what kind of message your school sends. If kids can hurt someone and call it a joke, then something's broken here." The principal nodded nervously. "Understood, sir. We'll make sure it's addressed properly." The mayor didn't say anything else. He turned and walked out of the office, his steps heavy. The staff in the hallway stepped aside as he passed. When he reached the nurse's office again, Tiana looked up at him, her eyes red but calm now. "Are we going home?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Yeah, sweetheart. We're going home." She stood slowly, picking up her backpack. As they walked through the hall, students turned to look. Some whispered, some looked ashamed, and a few offered sympathetic smiles. The mayor noticed everything, though every stare, every whisper. He didn't say a word until they reached the car. Inside, Tiana finally spoke. "Dad, please don't be mad at the school." "It's not their fault." He looked at her, surprised by how mature she sounded. "You're not the one who should be worrying about that right now." She shrugged. "I just don't want people saying it's a big deal. It's just hair." He turned to face her fully. "It's not just hair, Tiana, it's part of you. And no one gets to take a piece of you for fun." She looked out the window, her reflection staring back at her. The uneven patches on her head made her chest tighten. For the first time, she didn't want to go outside or see anyone. The confidence she had in the morning was gone, replaced by something small and scared. The drive home was quiet. The mayor kept glancing at her, remembering the little girl who used to laugh at everything, who used to run through sprinklers in the summer without a care. He wondered what this day would do to her. When they got home, her mother was waiting at the door. She had already heard what happened from the school counselor. As soon as she saw Tiana, she pulled her into a hug. No one spoke for a long moment. It was the kind of silence that holds both love and pain at once. Later, Tiana sat in her room while her mother gently untangled the remaining strands of her hair, trying to even them out. Every snip of the scissors made her heart ache a little more. She didn't cry again, but her eyes stayed glassy. Her father stood in the doorway watching, his jaw tight. He thought about calling the parents of the girls who did it. He thought about posting something on social media, but then he decided against it, not yet. He wanted to handle this with calm and strength, not anger. He had seen too many people lose control and get ignored because of it. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat in his study, staring at the family photo on his desk. Tiana was smiling in that picture, her curls glowing in the sunlight. He wanted that smile back. He wanted his daughter to feel proud again. Around midnight, he started drafting a letter, not to the principal, but to the entire school board. He wrote about how schools should protect children, not just from physical harm, but from emotional damage. He wrote that what happened to his daughter wasn't just bullying. It was a failure of empathy. He didn't include threats or political talk, just truth. In the morning, he woke up early, still thinking. His phone buzzed with messages from colleagues who had heard whispers about the situation. Some offered support. Others told him to stay calm and handle it quietly. But he wasn't sure he wanted quiet. When Tiana came down for breakfast, she wore a hoodie pulled low over her head. She didn't say much. Her father looked at her and said, "You don't have to go to school today." "I want to stay home," she said softly. "Okay." He nodded. "We'll figure things out together." While she stayed in her room drawing, something she always did to relax, her father drove back to City Hall. The air outside felt heavier than usual. His staff noticed he wasn't his usual cheerful self. They asked if everything was all right, but he just said, "Family issue. I'll handle it." He tried to focus on his work, but he couldn't. Every meeting felt pointless compared to what had happened. Around noon, he stood up and looked out his office window at the city below. He thought about all the other parents who might have gone through something like this, but didn't have a title or a platform to speak up. That thought hit him deeply. Maybe this wasn't just about his daughter. Maybe it was about something bigger. How children are treated, how schools protect them, and how adults teach them what's right. He picked up his phone and called the superintendent. "We need to talk," he said simply. An hour later, he was sitting across from the superintendent in a quiet office downtown. The older man looked concerned. "I heard what happened, Leonard. It's awful." "I'm so sorry," the mayor nodded. "I know it's not your fault, but I need to make sure this doesn't happen again. Not to my daughter, not to anyone else," the superintendent sighed. "We're reviewing everything. But you know how schools are. There's policy, process." "I understand," the mayor said. "But policy doesn't fix the heart. And we need to teach these kids empathy. We need to make sure they understand that cruelty isn't fun. It's harm." The superintendent listened quietly. He'd known Leonard for years, but he had never seen him this focused. "You're right," he said finally. "We can start something. Maybe an anti-bullying program that actually connects with students. If you're willing to help, we'll back it." The mayor nodded slowly. "I'll do more than help. I'll lead it." By the time he left the office, a plan was already forming in his mind. He didn't want revenge. He wanted change. Real, lasting change that would make kids think twice before hurting someone just because they're different. When he got home that evening, he found Tiana sitting on the couch, scrolling through her tablet. She looked up, her face still sad but curious. "Did you go to work today?" "Yes," he said, sitting beside her. "And I talked to some people. We're going to make sure what happened to you helps protect other kids. You didn't deserve what they did, but you're strong enough to turn it into something good." She looked at him quietly for a moment. "Do you really think so?" He smiled softly. "I know so." She nodded and leaned against his shoulder. "I just wish they understood how much it hurt." "They will," he said gently. "Soon enough." As the evening sunlight filled the room, the mayor realized this was just the beginning. His daughter's pain wasn't going to fade overnight, but maybe, just maybe, it could start something that would make their city a kinder place for every child. The next morning, the mayor woke up before sunrise. He sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee that had already gone cold, lost in thought. He'd barely slept. His mind kept replaying the image of his daughter sitting in that nurse's office, her hair uneven, her face pale with embarrassment. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it again, and it burned like fire inside him. He wasn't just angry at the kids who had done it. He was angry at the system that allowed it to happen, angry that no one had stepped in sooner, angry that his daughter had to experience that kind of humiliation in a place that was supposed to protect her. When Tiana came down for breakfast, she was quiet. She still had her hood up. Her mother placed a plate of eggs and toast in front of her, but she barely touched it. Her father noticed the way she avoided looking in mirrors now. The sparkle in her eyes was dimmer. He sat beside her. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly. She shrugged. "Okay, I guess." "You want to go back to school today?" She hesitated. "Not really," he nodded. "That's fine. You don't have to. Take your time." After a few minutes of silence, she asked in a small voice, "Are they in trouble?" Her father looked at her carefully. "The school said they're handling it, but I'm not sure that's enough." Tiana lowered her gaze. "They probably don't even care. They were laughing when they did it." He clenched his jaw but forced himself to stay calm. "Well, I care," he said. "And I'm not letting this go." Later that morning, he drove her to her grandmother's house so she wouldn't have to stay home alone. Then he headed straight to the school. He had no intention of making a scene. Not yet, but he wanted answers. As soon as he walked through the school doors, everyone noticed. Teachers fell silent mid-conversation. Students stopped in the hallway. He didn't look like the smiling mayor they usually saw at city events. He looked like a father who had reached his limit. The principal met him at the front office, nervous but polite. "Mr. Leonard, I wasn't expecting you this morning. Is everything all right?" "Not yet," the mayor said, his voice steady. "I need to see the girls who did this, and I want to know what the school is doing about it." The principal shifted uneasily. "Sir, we've already suspended them for 5 days. Their parents have been informed. We're also arranging counseling sessions." 5 days, the mayor repeated. "So they get a short break from school and my daughter gets to live with this memory for the rest of her life?" The principal hesitated, unsure how to respond. "We're following district policy." The mayor leaned forward slightly. "Then your policy is broken." Before the principal could reply, the school counselor entered the office. "Mr. Leonard," she said gently, "I want you to know we care deeply about what happened. I've spoken to Tiana several times. She's handling it with such grace. He gave her a grateful nod but kept his focus on the principal. Grace is something my daughter has plenty of. What she shouldn't have to have is forgiveness for people who think her pain is entertainment. The counselor looked down, moved by his words. The principal tried again to steer the conversation toward procedure, but the mayor wasn't listening anymore. He turned to leave. As he walked down the hall, whispers followed him. A few students peeked out of classrooms. One teacher quietly said, "Good for him," when he passed. Outside, he stood by his car for a moment, breathing in the cool morning air. His hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the mix of anger and sadness that had nowhere to go. He got into the car and sat there for a few minutes. He wasn't sure what to do next. Part of him wanted to go straight to the media, to expose what had happened. But another part of him knew he needed to be careful. He didn't want to make his daughter's pain a headline. He wanted justice, not attention. While he sat there thinking, his phone buzzed. It was a message from a local reporter he knew. Somehow word had already gotten out. Heard something happened at the school. Want to comment? The text read. He didn't reply. Not yet. Later that day, he went back to City Hall, but his focus was gone. During a meeting, one of his council members noticed he wasn't himself. "You good, boss?" the man asked quietly after the meeting. The mayor sighed. "No, not really." He ended up telling him what happened. The councilman's eyes widened in disbelief. "They actually cut her hair? That's insane." "I know," the mayor said. "And everyone's acting like it's just another case of bullying." His colleague leaned back. "You can't let this slide, Leonard. You have a platform. You can make people pay attention." The mayor looked down at the table. "I don't want to turn my daughter into a story." "Maybe it's not about turning her into a story," his friend said. "Maybe it's about turning this into a lesson." That line stayed with him the rest of the day. When he got home that evening, Tiana was in the living room drawing quietly. Her mother was folding laundry on the couch. The house felt heavy, like everyone was walking on eggshells. He sat next to his daughter. "What are you drawing?" he asked softly. She showed him the paper. It was a picture of a girl with big curly hair standing under a bright sun. The drawing was simple, but there was strength in it. He smiled. "That's beautiful," she shrugged. "I just wish my hair still looked like that." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "It will. And even before it does, you're still that girl. The one who shines." That night, he finally decided what he needed to do. He didn't want revenge. He wanted awareness. He wanted the city's kids and adults to see what kind of damage cruelty causes. The next morning, he called the superintendent again. "I'd like to hold an open assembly at the school," he said. "Not about punishment, about respect. About kindness. I'll speak myself." The superintendent hesitated but eventually agreed. 2 days later, the gymnasium was packed. Students filled the bleachers, curious about what the mayor was doing there. Teachers stood along the walls. The air buzzed with whispers. When the mayor stepped up to the microphone, the room fell silent. He wasn't wearing his usual formal suit. He looked like a dad, sleeves rolled up, face tired but steady. "I'm not here as your mayor today," he began. "I'm here as a father." He paused, scanning the faces in the crowd. Some students avoided his gaze. Others leaned forward, listening closely. "A few days ago, something happened in this school. My daughter was humiliated, not because she did something wrong, but because she looked different. And some of you thought that was funny." A murmur rippled through the gym. The bullies were sitting near the back, heads lowered. "I'm not here to shame anyone," he continued. "I'm here to make you think. Words hurt. Actions hurt more. And when you laugh at someone's pain, you become part of that harm." His voice stayed calm, but there was emotion in every word. "When I was your age, I went through things like this too. I thought the world had changed since then. I thought we'd learned better. But maybe we still have a lot to learn." He looked around again. "So let's start now. Let's learn what it means to respect people, not just the ones who look like you or talk like you, but everyone." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. He stepped back from the microphone and took a deep breath. "You can do better," he said softly. "I believe you can." When he left the stage, teachers clapped softly, followed by a few students and then the entire gym. It wasn't a standing ovation, but it was real, genuine. Later that day, when he went to pick up Tiana from her grandmother's house, she ran to him at the door. "Dad, everyone at school's talking about your speech," she said, half nervous, half proud. He smiled. "What are they saying?" Some kids said they felt bad. Others said they didn't know how much it hurt until now. He nodded. "Good, that's what we wanted." She hugged him tightly. "Thanks, Dad." He hugged her back, holding her close. "Always, baby girl, always." As they drove home, the sun dipped low behind the trees. For the first time in days, Tiana smiled. A small, quiet smile, but real. Her father glanced at her and felt something ease inside him. He knew the scars from this week wouldn't fade overnight, but maybe, just maybe, the healing had begun. The moment Mayor Leonard and his daughter walked out of the school building, cameras started flashing from every direction. It wasn't planned. One of the parents had recorded a short video on their phone and shared it online, and within minutes it began spreading like wildfire. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. A young girl walking beside her father, eyes still red from crying, while the mayor of the town looked like a man who had just faced the hardest day of his life. There was silence in his expression, but the anger in his eyes said more than any speech ever could. By the time they reached the car, a few parents tried to approach him, offering support and hugs. Some were crying themselves, shaken by the thought that something like this could happen in their community. Leonard thanked them quietly, then opened the car door for Tiana and helped her inside. He gave her a small smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "We're going home, sweetheart," he said softly. Inside the car, the silence was heavy. Tiana leaned her head against the window, watching the buildings pass by, and finally whispered, "Dad, I didn't think they'd actually do it." Leonard gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to control his emotions. He wanted to say so much, but all he could manage was, "I know, baby. You didn't deserve this. None of it." When they got home, the first thing he did was call his wife. She had been at a community event across town and rushed back immediately. When she walked through the door and saw her daughter sitting on the couch with chopped hair, her eyes filled with tears. She knelt down, gently brushing her fingers through the uneven strands. "Who could be so cruel?" she whispered. That night, Leonard couldn't sleep. He sat in his home office, staring at the small photo of Tiana on his desk, the one where she had a full head of curls and the brightest smile. He felt a deep ache in his chest. As a mayor, he had spent years promoting fairness, kindness, and equality in the community. But now all those speeches and public efforts felt meaningless because the injustice had walked right into his own home. He didn't want revenge. He wanted accountability. He wanted the school to understand that this wasn't some small student prank. It was humiliation. It was trauma. And it needed to be addressed the right way. The next morning, Leonard decided to release a short public statement, not as a politician, but as a father. He sat in front of his desk and recorded a short video on his phone. His tone was calm but firm. "Yesterday, something terrible happened to my daughter," he said. "She was bullied at her school, and what happened went far beyond childish teasing. This is not just about hair. It's about respect, safety, and dignity. No child should ever be made to feel small because of how they look or who they are." He didn't name the school or the bullies. He didn't even raise his voice. But the honesty in his words struck a chord with everyone who heard them. Within hours, the video had been shared thousands of times. Parents from all over the state commented, saying how sorry they were, how they stood with Tiana, and how similar things had happened to their own children. By noon, news vans were parked outside the mayor's home. Reporters wanted interviews, statements, and updates. But Leonard kept his focus on his daughter. He told everyone kindly, "Please give my family space. This is about my child's healing, not headlines." Still, the story spread fast. Local TV stations began covering it, calling it the mayor's stand for justice. Soon, larger networks picked it up. The school district felt the pressure immediately. The superintendent called Leonard personally, apologizing and promising a full investigation. But Leonard knew that promises weren't enough. He wanted changes, real, lasting ones, so no other kid had to go through what Tiana had. At school, things were different too. Some students were shocked by what had happened. Many started defending Tiana online, calling out the bullies for what they did. Others stayed silent, afraid to get involved. But there was one group of kids who decided to do something good. They started a small campaign called "Hair is Our Crown." They made posters and shared photos online celebrating different hair types, especially natural curls and braids. Slowly, what began as a painful incident started turning into a movement of pride and unity. Tiana saw some of those posts from home and felt something she hadn't felt in days: hope. She still wasn't ready to go back to school, but she smiled when she saw kids writing messages like, "We love your curls, Tiana, and stay strong, you're beautiful." It reminded her that not everyone was cruel. There were still kind hearts around her. A few days later, the school principal held a press conference. He apologized publicly and said the district would take strong disciplinary action against the students involved. But when a reporter asked if he would resign, he stumbled through his words, clearly nervous. The community wasn't satisfied with vague answers. They wanted transparency. They wanted accountability. Leonard stayed quiet during all this. He didn't want to turn it into politics. He wanted people to focus on the lesson, not on his position. Still, he couldn't ignore the power his words had sparked. When the governor's office reached out to express support, Leonard realized that this story had grown beyond their small town. It had become a symbol for families everywhere, a reminder that even small acts of cruelty can cause deep wounds, and silence only allows it to continue. One evening, a week after the incident, Leonard was sitting in the living room when Tiana came in quietly. She sat beside him and asked, "Dad, did I do something wrong? Is that why they did it?" Her voice was so small it nearly broke him. He turned to her, his eyes soft but filled with pain. "You did nothing wrong," he said firmly. "What they did says everything about them and nothing about you. Don't ever blame yourself." Tiana nodded, but her eyes filled with tears. Leonard pulled her close and held her tightly. "You are beautiful," he whispered. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." That same night, he got a message from a woman he didn't know. She wrote, "My daughter went through the same thing last year, but nobody listened. Because of your story, her school is finally taking bullying seriously. Thank you." Reading that message made Leonard realize something. This wasn't just about his family anymore. It was about every child who had ever been made to feel small for being different. He decided to take things further, not through anger, but through education. He met with teachers, counselors, and local activists to create workshops about cultural sensitivity and kindness. He wanted to turn his daughter's pain into something that could help others. When Tiana saw her dad working late nights again, but this time for a cause that came from the heart, she began to feel proud. She even offered to help, suggesting ideas for school programs that could make kids feel safer. Her courage amazed him. Soon Leonard and Tiana appeared together in a short interview. The host asked her how she felt now. Tiana took a deep breath and said, "At first I felt broken. But my dad taught me that being different is not something to hide. It's something to celebrate." Her words melted hearts everywhere. People cheered for her bravery and maturity. The story spread across the nation, appearing on morning shows and social media pages. Messages of love and support poured in from people of all backgrounds, some even sending letters and handmade gifts. But what touched the family most were the stories from other kids who had found the courage to speak up. At home, life started feeling normal again. The laughter returned and the silence faded. Leonard still kept a watchful eye, making sure his daughter was healing. But he noticed something powerful. She had grown stronger. Weeks had passed since that painful day, and the world around Tiana slowly began to calm. The chaos, the media attention, and the noise from strangers had started to fade, leaving behind what truly mattered: healing. The mayor, Leonard, made sure that life at home felt peaceful again. He stopped taking late-night meetings for a while and focused on his family. Every evening, they sat together at the dinner table, talking about simple things: school, books, the funny neighbor's dog, anything that brought normal moments back into their home. Tiana was still rebuilding her confidence. Some mornings she would stand in front of the mirror, running her fingers through the short strands of hair that were now growing back. It wasn't easy. She missed her curls, missed how they bounced when she laughed, but she was learning to love herself all over again. Her mother often stood behind her, reminding her that beauty was never about hair. It was about strength, kindness, and courage. One morning, Tiana surprised everyone. She walked out of her room wearing a bright yellow headband, smiling proudly. "I'm ready to go back to school," she said softly. Her parents exchanged a quick glance and a mixture of pride and worry. They wanted to protect her, but they also knew she was ready to face the world again. That first day back was quiet. When she walked through the school hallway, some kids looked at her with awkward eyes, not knowing what to say. Others smiled gently, offering kind nods. A few whispered things behind her back, but this time she didn't shrink away. She lifted her head high and walked with steady steps. In homeroom, her teacher greeted her warmly. "It's good to see you again, Tiana," she said. And for the first time in weeks, Tiana smiled without forcing it. The school had changed since the incident. Posters about kindness and respect were now on the walls. Teachers had started open discussions about bullying, teaching students to speak up and stand together. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. During lunch, a few girls from her art class came to sit beside her. One of them said quietly, "We're really sorry about what happened. Nobody should have done that." Tiana nodded, accepting their words. She didn't need revenge anymore. She just wanted peace. Later that week, the mayor was invited to the school board meeting. Parents, teachers, and students attended, wanting to see what changes would come next. Leonard didn't walk in as the mayor that night. He walked in as a father who wanted something better for all children. When he stood up to speak, the room went silent. His voice was calm and sincere. "I'm not here to blame anyone," he began. "What happened to my daughter was cruel, yes, but it's also a chance for us to change. We can't undo the past, but we can build a future where our children feel safe being who they are." He talked about empathy, about how kindness begins at home and how every small action, every word, can lift or break someone's spirit. He didn't shout or accuse. Instead, he spoke from the heart. And by the time he finished, many in the audience were wiping their eyes. The board agreed to implement new programs focused on emotional awareness and inclusion. They promised regular counseling sessions for students and training for teachers. The following month, the city hosted a youth community event, one that Leonard had been planning for weeks. He didn't want it to be about politics or publicity. He wanted it to be a day for kids to celebrate who they were. There were local bands, food stalls, and art exhibits created by students. But the highlight of the event was a small stage in the center of the park, where young people were invited to share stories about courage and kindness. Tiana watched from the crowd at first, sitting with her mom. Then one of the event organizers asked her softly, "Would you like to say something?" She hesitated, glancing at her father in the distance. He didn't push her. He simply gave her a gentle nod that said, "You can do this." With shaky hands, Tiana walked up to the stage. The microphone seemed bigger than her confidence, but as soon as she looked around and saw all the faces watching, parents, teachers, classmates, something in her heart steadied. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "My name is Tiana," she said softly. "A few weeks ago, something really bad happened to me. Some kids thought it would be funny to hurt me because of my hair. For a long time, I felt small and ashamed. But then I realized something. They didn't cut my courage. They didn't take away my worth." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "I learned that what makes us different is what makes us special. And I want every kid to remember that. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than you are. You belong exactly as you are." When she finished, there was silence for a moment. Then a wave of applause swept through the park. People stood cheering, clapping, even crying. Leonard, standing near the edge of the stage, felt his chest tighten with pride. For the first time since that awful day, he saw his daughter shining again, not as a victim but as a voice of strength. After the event, reporters wrote stories not about the tragedy, but about hope. Headlines called it, "A Father and Daughter's Journey from Pain to Purpose." But Leonard didn't care for the attention. What mattered to him was that his daughter was smiling again, and that other kids were learning something meaningful from her courage. In the weeks that followed, the school saw changes everywhere. The students who had hurt Tiana were still facing consequences, but even they began attending counseling sessions and speaking to teachers about what they did. Some even wrote letters of apology, not because they were told to, but because they had finally begun to understand how much pain their actions caused. Tiana didn't respond to the letters right away. She wasn't sure she could, but one evening she read them quietly with her parents. Some of the words made her cry, others made her think. And in that moment she realized forgiveness wasn't about letting people off the hook. It was about freeing herself from carrying the hurt. A few days later, she asked her dad if she could visit the school counselor. When she came back, she said she had written something to share with her classmates. At the next school assembly, she stood in front of everyone holding a small piece of paper. "I don't hate anyone," she said simply. "I just want us to be better. We can't change what happened, but we can decide who we want to be next." Her words lingered in the room long after she stepped down. That night at home, Leonard helped her braid her short hair. The strands were growing thicker and healthier, and as he gently twisted each section, he said, "You know, when you were little, your mom used to call your hair your crown. But I think your real crown is invisible." Tiana laughed softly. "What do you mean?" He smiled. "It's the way you hold yourself. It's your courage. It's everything that makes you, you." She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes glistening. "Thanks, Dad." He tied the final braid, leaned back, and said, "You've taught me something, too. You showed me what real strength looks like." Outside, the sun was setting over the city, his city. The same city where pain had once filled their days was now becoming a place of hope and change. Schools were introducing new anti-bullying lessons. Kids were sharing their own stories online. The movement that began with one painful act had grown into something beautiful, a message of kindness and courage, spreading far beyond their town. Weeks later, as Tiana walked to school one morning, a little girl from another grade ran up to her and said, "I love your hair." It was such a simple moment, but it made her heart feel full. She smiled and said, "Thank you." When she turned back, her dad was standing by the car, watching her with quiet pride. He didn't have to say anything. The look in his eyes said it all. She had turned her pain into power. That day, Tiana finally understood what her father had meant. Her crown wasn't made of curls or ribbons. It was made of strength, love, and everything she had become through the storm. And as she walked through the school doors, head held high, she knew she was ready for anything life had to offer. Months had passed since the day everything changed for Tiana and her family. Life was slowly returning to something that felt peaceful again. The whispers had faded, the reporters had moved on, and the town had found its rhythm once more. But something inside the mayor's family was different now. They had all grown, not just older, but stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever before. For Tiana, the journey had not been easy. Healing rarely is. There were still mornings when she looked in the mirror and felt a sting of sadness when she remembered what those bullies had done. But each time she reminded herself that the girl she saw in the reflection was more than the pain she had endured. Her hair was growing back beautifully, thicker and curlier than before, but what grew stronger than anything else was her confidence. At school, things had changed too. The principal had stepped down quietly a month earlier, replaced by a woman who made it her mission to rebuild trust among students and parents. She visited classrooms, listened to students' concerns, and made sure that kindness was not just written on posters but practiced every single day. The school hallways felt warmer now, filled with murals painted by the students, each one carrying a message of respect, unity, and pride. Tiana became a quiet leader. She didn't ask for it, it just happened naturally. Other kids looked up to her, not because she was the mayor's daughter, but because she carried herself with a quiet kind of strength. When new students joined the school, she was always the first to smile and welcome them. She volunteered in the library, helped with the art club, and tutored younger students who were shy or struggling to fit in. One day after school, a younger girl named Lily came to her with tears in her eyes. "They keep making fun of my accent," she said. "I try to ignore it, but it hurts." Tiana didn't say much. She just listened, then gently put a hand on the girl's shoulder. "You don't have to change anything about yourself," she said softly. "Sometimes people only laugh because they don't understand what makes someone special. But one day they'll wish they had your courage." Lily smiled through her tears, and that moment reminded Tiana of her own father's words. Words that had once helped her stand tall when the world tried to make her small. Back at home, things had also evolved. Leonard had returned to his duties as mayor, but he carried his fatherly instincts into his work now more than ever. He launched new youth initiatives, creating mentorship programs for students and support systems for families facing bullying or discrimination. He visited schools across the city, listening to kids tell their stories. Some were heartbreaking, others full of hope. Each one reminded him why leadership mattered, not for power, but for people. One evening, as the sun set behind City Hall, Leonard found himself standing alone in his office, looking out over the town he loved so deeply. The last few months had tested him in ways he never imagined. There were nights when he doubted himself, when he wondered if he could protect his family from the ugliness of the world. But looking out that window, he realized something powerful. He hadn't failed. He had faced the storm, and he had done it with grace. At home that night, as the family ate dinner, Tiana shared some exciting news. "Our school is starting a kindness week," she said, smiling. "They asked me to give a short talk." Leonard and his wife looked at each other proudly. "That's wonderful," her mom said. "What are you going to say?" Tiana shrugged with a small grin. "I'm not sure yet. Maybe I'll just tell the truth." The following Friday, the entire school gathered in the gymnasium. The bleachers were filled with students, teachers, and even a few parents. Banners hung from the walls, painted with words like respect, empathy, and courage. When Tiana stepped onto the stage, her heart raced but her voice stayed calm. "I used to think being different was something to be scared of," she began. "But now I know it's what makes us who we are. We all have something special about us, our hair, our voice, our background, our dreams. And when we laugh at someone for being different, we don't just hurt them. We hurt ourselves too because we miss the chance to learn something new." The room was silent. Even the teachers sat still, listening. "When bad things happen," she continued, "we can either let them break us or let them build us. I chose to let it build me." Her words hung in the air like a quiet promise. When she finished, everyone stood and clapped. Some students were wiping tears, others smiling proudly. It wasn't just a speech. It was a moment of healing for everyone in that room. After the assembly, Leonard received a message from the new principal. She said, "Your daughter changed more hearts today than any program ever could." He read the message twice, then sat back in his chair, smiling to himself. The story of Tiana's courage continued to ripple far beyond their town. A small local newspaper wrote an article about her speech, and soon other schools began reaching out, asking her to speak to their students. She didn't consider herself a speaker or a hero. She just wanted to remind kids that kindness mattered. But her words traveled farther than she ever imagined. Months later, the governor invited Leonard and Tiana to a youth leadership summit. She was nervous at first, but her dad reassured her, "Just be yourself. That's what people connect with," he said. When it was her turn to speak, she looked out at hundreds of young faces and said, "I used to think one voice couldn't change much. But then I learned that even one voice can start a conversation, and conversations can change everything." The crowd erupted in applause, and Leonard couldn't stop smiling. In that moment, he realized that his daughter wasn't just healing. She was helping others heal too. Back home, life began to feel like normal again, but in a better way. There was laughter at the dinner table, music playing on weekends, and a deep sense of gratitude that filled their home. Every small moment, a shared meal, a simple hug, a quiet walk in the park, felt like a gift. One quiet evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Leonard turned to his daughter and said, "Do you remember the day I stormed into your school?" Tiana laughed. "Of course I do. Everyone remembers that day," he smiled. "I was so angry I didn't even think. I just wanted to protect you. But looking back, I realize you didn't need me to fight for you forever. You found your own way to stand strong." Tiana rested her head on his shoulder. "I think we both learned something," she said softly. "You taught me to never stay silent. And I taught you that sometimes even the smallest person can make a big difference." Leonard nodded. "You sure did.